And can we save the planet from plastic pollution? What has been achieved so far and what needs to be done next? It's all coming up on Impact. On Saturday, Panama became the first Central American country to ban single-use plastic bags as it tries to clean up its polluted beaches. It's joined around 90 other countries that have either totally or partially banned single-use plastic bags in an effort to tackle what the United Nations has called a planetary crisis. So this week on Impact Minds, we're asking, can we save the planet from plastic pollution? Now, before I introduce our guests, let's take a few moments to look at some of the facts when it comes to plastic production and pollution. The United Nations says that around 400 million tonnes of plastic is made every year around the world. But less than 10% of that actually ends up being recycled. And as a consequence, up to 8 million tonnes of plastic will find its way into the globe's oceans. It's thought that as of 2019, humans have produced around 9 billion tonnes of plastic since it was first made, and that was actually at the beginning of the 20th century. Let me bring you our guest that is here beside me. Dave Ryan, you are Chief Executive of PowerHouse Energy Group. Great to have you with us. Also with us is Kavita Prakashmani, which is WWF's Global Conservation Director. Joining us today from New York. Kavita, you are very welcome as well. And why don't we start with that question that we're asking, can we save the planet from plastic pollution? Kavita, let me begin with you.
We can indeed save the planet from plastic pollution, but we need to act now. I think, as you said with your statistics, it's a dire situation. We have about a truckload of plastic being dumped into our oceans every minute. That's what adds up to the 8 million per year. We also have it going down our big rivers. So 10 of the Asian rivers carry about 90% of the plastic. It's in our water, it's in our air, it comes from our clothes, it comes from the tires, and it's not going away anytime soon. But we can make a difference. And for that, we are calling on all stakeholders, all players like you and me, but also the governments to act up. So if we could have a legally binding government agreement, if we could have companies looking at innovation, really looking at reducing the amount of plastic that we create, putting the remaining plastic into a circular economy, so we're reusing it, recycling it, and not letting it leak into the ocean or into any of our other natural environments to save our species and save ourselves. We know that about 5 grams on average is being ingested by people. We don't know what health impact it has, but we know that it's almost ubiquitous in the environment. So action needs to be taken now.
So let me come back. You've raised a lot of points there, Kavita, but let me turn to you, Dave. I mean, do you feel the planet can be saved from plastic pollution?
Oh, certainly. As an engineer and having worked my life in solving problems, there must be a solution there. For now, within PowerHouse, we are looking at community-based
And maybe we should explain
solutions.
what PowerHouse is.
Yes. We take non-recyclable plastics, black trays, flower pots and the like, and we create a clean gas from those that can be used perhaps to separate into hydrogen for buses and lorries, or for power generation or other sources.
Well, that is, you're feeling very positive, and Kavita is as well. May I return briefly, Kavita? You mentioned that it is everywhere. Do we know, however, whether it is harmful to humans? I did read somewhere that humans ingest the equivalent of a credit card of plastic each day, but we're all here living and breathing. How do we know there's a problem?
It's a credit card a week or equivalent there of about 5 grams. But the number is almost immaterial. It's that we are ingesting it. We don't actually know the health impact of plastic on humans yet. There's a lot of research that's ongoing. The World Health Organization is looking at it. We have seen the impact on wildlife. So, the number of whales that are beaching up with tons of plastic in their stomach that have been completely starved because of that. Birds, turtles with rings of plastic, birds with plastic in their stomach. So we know that it's killing our species. We know that it's in the environment. We don't know the direct health impact yet, and that's a piece of research that's ongoing.
You know, I think what has become really to the forefront of consumers' minds, because they're beginning to act differently, whether it's plastic cups or plastic bags. I want to bring in a map showing the countries that have placed legal restrictions on single-use plastic bags as of now. I find that really interesting to look at. So you see that full ban in red, orange partial ban, yellow ban under consideration, and grey no ban. And Kavita, you probably can't see that, but I mean, there is, we'd say, I'm going to say about a 50-50 when it comes to actually no ban or somebody doing something about it. My question really, when it comes to, okay, I'm not going to use plastic bags anymore, does one person's decision actually have an impact on plastic pollution at a global level?
I think everyone needs to take action at whatever level they can. So yes, it does make a difference, but we all need to act. And you've been talking about the countries banning it, and that's very often just a ban on plastic bags, which is, important. So about 40% of our plastic pollution comes from packaging. So of course it's important, and whether it's straws or single-use bottles or all of the single-use efforts that we have in the lifestyle that we do. So we do need to change that in an individual level, and of course at a government level. We really want the governments to step up. So much more investment needs to go into the waste management system. Currently, only about 20% of all plastics is even collected, and Dave's been talking about that, but only 9% is actually recycled. So we have a lot of plastic that's out there, and that comes down to also design from companies. How are our products being designed? Are they recyclable, compostable, biodegradable? Can we bring back and create a demand for the valuable plastic that we have so that it's coming back into recycling mode? That demand needs to be created as well. So absolutely, we all need to act. Every action matters. Yeah,
so whether it's the coffee cup, but you bring up the issue of recycling, where Dave is really thinking about that. Now, there was a line I was reading that some recycling naysayers, shall I say, claim that recycling plastic is more trouble than it's worth from the perspective of the sheer resource efficiency.
One can argue with it, but on the other hand, it keeps the carbon that we've withdrawn from the earth in constant use. At the end of its life, then trying to regenerate that carbon back into a gas or an energy source is one of the solutions I'm offering.
So that is what you're doing. But if this is something that is sustainable, also economical, why isn't everybody doing it?
The challenge for us is we are a new company, and all my customers want to be second. So not being a small company, it's very difficult to get the global reach that we really need. We're looking for industrial partners, the conglomerates and the like, to work alongside us.
I'm going to get to some of the tweets we got from our viewers in just a moment, but are there businesses that you feel are making real inroads and initiatives that you'd like to see copied around the world?
There are certainly companies that are interested in what we're doing and other similar technologies for regenerating the plastics that are there. There are also large charities who are trying to remove the plastics from the rivers and the oceans. And certainly, has been said, we should be targeting those 8 rivers that produce a vast majority of the plastics that are ending up in the ocean.
Specific rivers that should be at the forefront.
Yes. I'd be supportive of our technology being located along those rivers so that local communities could withdraw the plastic and we could create energy for them.
Kavita, you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you for that. I just wanted to add a couple of points. One is that we don't want the plastic to actually reach there. We want the plastic to stay in circulation. So a lot of companies are taking action and have committed to recycling or reuse or compostability of the plastic that they use. But actually what we're also asking is that they use plastic that is recycled so that we create a demand for it, so we don't go down to the end of the pipe where we're actually having to burn it to create energy. About 4% of oil and gas is currently used to produce plastic. And to your earlier news point on climate change, 6% of emissions are coming from plastic. So we're actually very keen that we reduce and eliminate plastic in the first place and then keep it in circulation rather than look for ways of actually it being recovered from nature or trying to take it out once it's in nature, because the quality of the plastic degrades, of course, by every use, but it also degrades by being in nature and being contaminated by other means of, whether it's in water or in land. And so we don't actually want it out of the waste system or the circularity system at all.
So you feel there is a link between climate change and plastic? Yes.
There is, of course. I mean, these are fossil fuel-based production items, and therefore they have value. And I think we've kind of forgotten how to create the value from this material that we have. It's a very special material, has a lot of uses, but again, to create the value so that it stays in the system and is brought back to create new products, but not creating more plastic from that would be where we would be headed. And that's why we need governments to create the incentive for companies to actually take action.
Thank you, Kavita, for that. Well, let's take a look at what some of you are telling us on Twitter. Let me begin with Walt, who says, this is, can we save the planet from plastic pollution? He says, no, we could, but it won't happen. We will never get rid of plastic products. It's our second best excuse for using fossil fuels. Fossil fuels and their byproducts will be our undoing. Let me move on to Arsalan, who says, if we want to reduce plastic use, we must get more taxes from users and the plastic industries. And finally, Urvashi asks, what happens to the existing huge amount of plastic across the world? The plastic industry hasn't shut down. Will a high plastic tax deter them from production? Oh, why don't we just try and get an answer to that? I want to bring in from Plymouth an environmental writer and broadcaster, Lucy Siegel. Lucy, good to have you with us. I'm curious on how you feel about, there was a tweet that just came into us from a viewer saying there needs to be a plastic tax. I can see you're getting mic'd up there for us. You have just whizzed into the studio. We appreciate that. The beauty of live television. Do you think a plastic tax could work to deter people from using it in the quantities they are?
I think a plastic tax has some part to play for sure. I think one of the things that we still don't have enough data from companies and brands who are pushing plastic out globally into different marketplaces, and we need plastic disclosure from them. There was a disclosure project that started a few years ago but didn't really go anywhere, and we've had to really squeeze out of some of the main brands how much plastic they're actually pushing onto the world each year. That's an important starting point. The problem with plastic bans, which is what we often see, is we'll ban wet wipes or we'll ban cotton buds or whatever, is that something just moves up the list and takes its place. So plastic taxes are very important as part of the legislative framework to actually shift the dial on this issue, because we need to stimulate the markets, obviously, but the plastic disclosure that we need is also very, very important, because I think, as you alluded to, when I was getting mic'd up, I heard somebody say that we are producing more volume year on year. So we're failing to make a real dent in the plastic pandemic as it stands at the moment. So plastic taxes, yes, but plastic disclosure and more rules and legislation about what types of polymer brands can use, because it is only when you scale down the variables, and that means that brands are only allowed to push very clear different polymers onto the marketplace, that recycling and collection really becomes feasible. At the moment, it's basically a free-for-all in most countries, with a very, very few exceptions. As many polymers, as many additives as you like, and that is very technically difficult for recyclers to get hold of, collect, sort and recycle.
But, you know, as you talk about it, and I'd be curious what countries you feel are doing really well, but, you know, I was thinking about this discussion this morning. I got up, I used my hairbrush, I used my toothbrush, the telephone, whatever. It is everywhere. Surely plastic is a good material in many, many ways. You're not looking for it to be eradicated.
No, not at all. So, I mean, you know, we wouldn't have gone to the moon without plastics. We wouldn't have, you know, a lot of eco-performance cars without plastics. We wouldn't have heart valves, replacement heart valves without plastics. But as societies, we need to come together and we need to agree, like grown-ups, on what plastics are necessary and what are not. And my whole work in plastics is really stimulated by the shrink-wrapped cocoa coconut. In this country, in the UK, we have retailers who think they can improve on the hard, robust, hairy shell that Mother Nature has provided for coconuts and wrap it in plastic. It is patently stupid and ridiculous, and we have to stop using plastic in an inappropriate and disrespectful way. But in terms of countries that have done stuff, we've seen Norway bring in a deposit return system for bottles, and it's not just that they brought in the mechanism, they brought in the laws.
I'm going to jump in. I'm going to let Norway be the country that you say. Lucy Siegel, Kavita Pragash, and also Dave Ryan. Thank you all for speaking to us about whether we can save the planet from plastic pollution. Sport Today is coming up next.